Excellent. Good morning, everybody. In August of last year, a young girl in Sweden decided to skip school. And that might have gotten her into trouble with her parents, but things were different that August because she decided to stand right outside of the Swedish parliament with a banner and ask the government to do something about climate change. Greta Thunberg probably didn't anticipate that just 6 months later, more than 1 million young people would take to the streets on Fridays in the Fridays for Future movement, literally in more than 100 countries around the world. Every year in the summertime, people around the world also take to the streets to celebrate Pride. They celebrate the rights and equality not only for people from the LGBTQ community, but really for everybody around the world who cares about diversity. This year we celebrate 50 years of the Stonewall riots that really were the starting point for the Pride parades, and every year these parades have become bigger and better and more inclusive. Now, just earlier this year, a debate that started out as a conversation about European copyright became a debate about the future of the open web. And it was interesting to see that what in the beginning was a conversation about, I would say, legal scholars and politicians turned into a conversation that activated young people and old people with a passion in the open web. And they not only had that debate online, they took to the streets. Hundreds of thousands of people discussed. We have noise on my mic. I'm happy to use this one. Is this better? Yes. Thank you. So hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets to express their point of view on what they wanted this copyright to be or not to be. And they showed that their collective voice had power, that it had meaning, that it was in fact not bots taking to the streets, but real people with a real interest in the future of the internet. So all three of these stories actually have something in common. All three of them are about people wanting to have a voice and wanting to express themselves. It's about people who care about something so deeply that they take to the streets, they take to the internet, and they want to be part of something that may be even bigger than themselves. It's obviously about giving people a voice. So the question is, how do we do this? How do we give people a voice? How do we make them seen? And how do we make them heard? So I'd like to take you back on a short journey to April of 2005. And perhaps you can show me just with a show of hands, although it's hard in the light here to see, if you recall where you were in April of 2005. You recall what you did, where you were in your lives in April 2005? No, a couple of you do, not that many. Well, I'll show you a guy called Jawed Karim, who definitely remembers what he did. He was standing in the San Diego Zoo, and he uploaded a video that he very appropriately called "Me at the Zoo" in front of the elephant enclosure. And it actually is a moment that is very meaningful for the history of human self-expression. Because that, in fact, was the very first video to be uploaded on YouTube, a platform that he, with a couple of his friends, had started just in 2005. Now, the early mission and the early slogan of YouTube was bold and irreverent. They called it "Broadcast Yourself." And I would argue that up until that point, self-expression, probably in most cases, actually was quite limited to the people that you knew and the company that you kept. But with a single upload in 2005, YouTube changed that. Because all of a sudden, it wasn't just the founders themselves, it was really people around the world who discovered a way to share the stories of their lives, to share both the highs and the lows, to share some of their memories of their loved ones, and yes, that included lots of cats and dogs, but also to share stories of community that might actually people get interested around a topic of particular passion. And what then happened was also interesting, because other people not only shared the videos, but they commented on them, and you started having dialogues about people's broadcasting of themselves. So with just that simple beginning, the nature of media changed quite fundamentally, from a one-way street into really a two-way conversation. Suddenly, media and video in this particular case was interactive. It was fluid. It was authentic because it was real people speaking to each other. And with that, I think expression changed, and we have seen enormous changes in the meantime. It's because suddenly people had a voice. And when people have a voice, and when other people find that voice appealing, when they start having an audience, not just a voice, lots of great things can happen. So for example, fun things can happen. So if you remember back in 2013, you might remember the story of course, the Harlem Shake. And perhaps you might even have taken some videos of Harlem Shakes yourself, because within a matter of weeks, there were lots of videos uploaded on the Harlem Shake in schools, in workplaces, in hospitals, and train stations, and it was actually kind of funny to watch. So in this particular movie, I wish it would actually start. Can we get it started? No, it seems a bit frozen, but yes, thank you. Thank you, that's good. So I think that will do, thank you. So the point is, it became a cultural moment within a matter of days and weeks, and it started out by somebody having a funny idea. And by the way, my favorite person in that video continues to be the blue Smurf in the front line. I'm not sure what your favorite one is. But anyways, when people have a voice and when other people find this appealing, fun things happen. And of course, it's not only about fun things. Sometimes it's about learning and education. And I have to say, one of my personal favorite channels that I like to watch is a learning and education channel called Kurzgesagt, in a nutshell. So maybe some of you know it because it's actually a channel that originates here in Germany. And what the folks at Kurzgesagt do is they take very complex problems and they explain them in a very easy to follow and graphic and animated way. Again, you can please run this in the background.
Unfortunately, it doesn't. Since synthetic polymers are so durable, plastic takes between 500 and 1,000 years to break down. But somehow, we collectively decided to use this super tough material for things meant to be thrown away. 40% of plastics are used for packaging. In the US, packaging makes up one-third of all the waste that is
I think that's fine, you can stop it again. I think the point here is they have actually found not only a voice, but an audience, because more than 9 million people subscribe to this channel, and it's purely about education, it's about learning something, and I think that is actually quite remarkable. And of course, there's lots and lots of other examples for how people share what they have learned and other people find it relevant for them. Now, giving people a voice is not only important for fun or for education, it's really also quite important for people who may not have a shared community yet, or who may be less outspoken than others. So I'll give you an example in a second, but I'll ask you first, has any one of you ever looked for videos of elevators? Elevators going up and down, elevator doors opening and closing. I haven't seen that many hands, I'm assuming that's a no, but it's actually a thing. So there is a community of people who not only upload videos of elevators, but who also actually really enjoy watching them. And one of the first people to find this interesting is a gentleman called Andrew Reams, and he has a channel that's called Diesel Ducey. More than 100 million views globally on videos of elevators. I don't think we actually have to watch it because you get the point. He sees an elevator, he describes it, the doors open, close, go up and down. Now, the interesting thing is that more than half of the people watching the videos have some form of autism, because apparently for people with these particular forms of autism, the videos are quite soothing, they are very relaxing, they are very organized, and for them it actually is a quite helpful thing to watch these videos. And so with, I would say, a chance upload of an elevator movie, something has happened that has gone way beyond what this creator ever imagined. It's built a community and it's found an audience of people who find this incredibly relevant. Now, staying in the picture of doors opening and closing, giving people a voice is also about opening doors that were previously completely closed. And what I mean by that is to events and instances that previously were only for a selected few. And perhaps one example of that is the Munich Security Conference. It's a conference that's been taking place for decades. And you could move to the next slide, please, over here. No longer the elevators. If we can move to the Munich Security Conference. It has been taking place for decades, and it's actually quite interesting because heads of state and defense politicians talk about the key security issues of our day and age. But it used to be closed. Now it's not only live streamed, but also actually at this year's security conference, YouTubers had a chance to interview heads of state, to interview Christine Lagarde, the chairwoman of the IMF, to interview Vitaly Klitschko. So all in all, 20 really fascinating personalities. And the point is that this event has now found an audience, and lots of young people try to engage with the content and actually find an interest in what's going on behind these previously closed doors. Now, I would be remiss to say that there aren't also downsides of openness. Of course there are. Openness can have downsides when the openness is misused for negative content or even for unlawful content. And we see that in the rise of disinformation. We see it in topics such as hate speech. We see it in violent extremism, that actually people are also using the power of the open internet to spread information that is very unhelpful, that is negative and even unlawful. And so I think we as a society and we also as a platform on YouTube have lots of things to do to figure this out in the right way. We take our responsibility very seriously to get this right, because we want to make sure that we provide a safe environment. We have a role to play in making sure that the content that is uploaded is positive content, not unlawful content. So to find, detect, and decide on content. But I also think as a society we have to decide together where and how we draw the lines and who draws the lines. What is already hate speech and what is still freedom of expression? What is satire and what is already beyond the limits of what's okay? These are tough questions, and I think as a society we need to figure them out together. As a company, we have not only technology to do this, but also more than 10,000 people who regularly look at content and who decide what should be in and what should be out. And I think we have a long way still to go, because our mission is to do this responsibly. In fact, responsibility is our #1 priority, and it's actually something that we take very seriously. So we need strong rules and policies, and at the same time, we need to continue to give people a voice and an opportunity to express themselves, because that is really what the promise of the internet is all about. And I think you see how complicated that debate is when we go back to the conversation about the European copyright that I started out with. Because that debate shows that this shouldn't be just discussed between a handful of people, between a handful of politicians and companies. This should be something that we as a society engage on. Young people and older people, sort of the digital natives, as well as ones that perhaps still consider all of this as a bit of Neuland. This should be an engaged conversation where people have a chance to chime in. And I think you saw in these demonstrations that happened earlier this year that actually lots of people were concerned about whether they would still be able to find all the information they like, whether they would still be able to find creators that they appreciate, and whether they would be able to sort of make sure that the creators continue with their thriving businesses. And then in May, one thing happened that I think all of us in Germany also read about or even saw. It's a creator who released a video about the upcoming European elections. In fact, he released it about a week before, and in a short period of time, more than 15 million people watched Rezo's video. Now, a whole debate ensued, and you might or might not agree with everything he said, or even with anything he said. But one thing is clear, it's that Rezo really hit a nerve with 15 million people who watched the video. 15 million people who also wanted to have a voice, who wanted that voice to be heard in an upcoming election. And I think that shows the power of this medium to elevate what people think, also to politicians and to the broader world, and it's an important contribution. It's something that we should endorse, even if we do not agree with everything that's being said or with anything that's being said in there. So, What is it that connects all of these videos that I spoke about, all of these types of things, the elevators, the creators, the political opinions that have been shared? So I think the common thread of all of these videos is actually that people are looking to share their voices with the rest of the world, and lots of people are interested in hearing what other people have to say. And it's happening in media that didn't exist before just 15 years ago. It's all possible only because of the open web. The open web was built on the promise of creativity, of freedom of expression, and of finding an audience that wants to listen to you. The power of the open web is that it's not created by a few for the many, but it's created by all of us for the whole world to see. And that's something that we need to cherish and protect. Now, openness can also bring about all sorts of new challenges, and I spoke about some of them, whether it's hate speech or violent extremism, and we need to address those challenges. We need to find new policies, we need to get much better at dealing with them. But let's not forget the intrinsic value of the open web. And what is that intrinsic value? Well, I would say it's the power to give a single voice the opportunity to speak to the whole world and to have an impact that's much bigger than initially thought. So let's make sure that we preserve the magic of openness while we give everyone a voice. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Philipp. I hope you actually liked the talk, and we would like to give you the opportunity to answer some questions, or actually to answer the questions of the audience. And we're going to start right away with the first one, which says, giving everyone a voice has also meant giving extremists a voice. How will YouTube convince the public they have a solution for this danger? What do you think?
So it's a topic that is at the very top of our list because, as I said, giving extremists a voice cannot be the right thing to do, especially when it's violent extremists that ask for unlawful behavior. So how do we think about this? Well, first, we have to find those videos, we have to identify them, and then people have to make a decision on whether they're okay because they're in the freedom of expression side, or whether they're actually violent extremists. And as I said, we have more than 10,000 people who actually do that, plus we have technology behind that. But I think it actually will take much longer to get this right, and it will be both on our side, but also on the side of deciding what content is okay and what content is not okay, which is a societal topic. It will take years for us to figure this out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And do you see a risk in YouTube's algorithm that leads to people staying in their filter bubble instead of hearing everyone's voice? A very good question.
I think that is a risk, and I think we have seen it in areas. Now, what we try to do on politically charged topics is actually not only show one side of the story. So when you have watched a video, that you won't only see the same voice and the same thing over and over again, but that you'll see a breadth of topics, especially when it's about politically charged discussions. And I think that's really important also in news situations. So take, for example, if something happens in the world and you get the first set of reports on what has just happened, we need to make sure that actually there's a breadth of breaking news sources that are reliable, that you can depend on. And so we're working really hard with all sorts of news organizations to make sure we get that right.
And one question from my side, how do you try to stay out of a filter bubble?
Me personally?
Yes.
Well, I actually look at lots of different news sources, and I try not to just click on things that I already know, but I actually look for the opinion that actually differs to my own and see what's out there and understand that.
Then we continue with the next one. What is your vision for the future of YouTube in 10 years? Which differences can we expect?
So I think one of the things to keep in mind is that only just half of the world's population really is online. A bit more than half of the population globally is online. So we're trying to make sure that YouTube and other services that we offer are as available for people who are not yet online or always online as they are for all of us. That's a really big priority for us. And that's not an easy one because in many places internet access isn't great. So we're combining that with making sure that our products like YouTube also need to work in low bandwidth areas. Many people don't have the same kind of, I would say, luxury we have in the Western world of having high bandwidth areas. So that's one, giving more people access to it, having YouTube be the voice for more and more people around the world. And then I think you'll see us on more and more devices, because the world is increasingly moving beyond desktop and mobile into more and more devices and screens.
And who knows what will be in 10 years, right?
I certainly don't, and I'd love for Toa to tell us a bit more.
And how does Google help in creating a safe environment?
Yeah, I mean, that's a long question. The short answer would be we try to make sure we have the right policies in place. We try to make sure that actually we detect when policies are not being met, and we work with lots of third parties. So, for example, in areas where we are not experts, we reach out to child protection organizations or organizations that deal with religious discussions and try to understand what actually is that content, and can you help us understand what's legitimate and not.
Thank you so much, Philipp, and for answering your questions. I hope most of them are fulfilled, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.